There's a reason old families in Appalachia bury their dead deep and never dig alone. But the Breckenridge family didn't listen. Not in 1913. Not when the ground was dry and groaning. And certainly not when the forest tried to stop them. This isn't a ghost story. It's worse. Because what happened in that valley didn't just take their lives. It erased them. Names, faces, records, like they were never born. But someone remembered. And now, so will you. The Breckenridges lived in a weather-beaten farmhouse just outside Dry Branch Hollow, tucked deep into the folds of West Virginia, where no paved roads went and no outsiders stayed long. A father, a mother, 2 sons, and 1 girl. Simple, honest people, until they started digging. It began with a collapsed root cellar, rotted from within, floorboards sunken. But when Elijah Breckenridge sent his sons down to clear it, they found something buried beneath the clay. A carved stone. Perfectly square. Unnatural. Cold, even in the July heat. And next to it, a handprint. Too small for a man, too long for a child. They told no one. Not the preacher. Not the sheriff. Not even their neighbors, who noticed the lanterns burning through the night for 3 days straight. On the 4th day, the forest went silent. No birds. No crickets. Just wind that didn't move the trees. By the 5th day, the Breckenridge house stood abandoned. Dinner left on the table. Tools by the front porch. A Bible open to Revelation 12. No signs of a struggle. No blood. But every photograph in the home, even the tintype sealed in frames, had been scratched. The eyes gone. A search party was formed. They found the pit. Still open. But the stone was gone. And inside the pit? Fingernails. Wedged into the walls. 8 of them. Human. Fresh. Still red. That valley's never grown anything since. No birds nest there. No trees take root. Even now, a century later, maps label it unsettled. Not because no one lives there, but because something else does. And here's what they don't tell you. That stone? The carvings weren't English, or Latin, or Cherokee. They matched symbols found beneath the Vatican. And they predate language. They were gone, but not for long. Not in the way you'd expect. 3 weeks after the Breckenridge family vanished, people in the surrounding hollows began to whisper, not to authorities, not in church, just to each other, behind closed doors and locked shutters. They said the little girl came back first. She was seen standing in the middle of the road, barefoot, covered in dirt. Her dress torn like she'd clawed her way out of the earth. Eyes wide open, not blinking, just watching. When a farmer tried to approach her, she didn't speak, didn't run, didn't cry. She just turned and walked into the tree line. He followed her maybe 10 steps before something made him stop. Not fear. A pressure, like something old and heavy had turned its full attention toward him. He said it felt like trying to move under deep water, except the air was dry. That same night, another neighbor said he heard whispering outside his cabin. But when he stepped out with his lantern, the woods were empty. Until he turned back to his door and saw a handprint, wet, on the glass. 5 fingers, but too long. He never stayed another night on that land. 2 more sightings happened before the local church officially declared the Breckenridges lost. But the town knew better. You could feel it in the way people changed. Men stopped hunting past the ridge. Children weren't allowed near the creek. And no one, not even drunk, would speak the family's name out loud. But here's where the story splits. A journal was found in 1976 inside a sealed cabinet beneath the town's abandoned post office. No name. No date. Just this. The mother walks the perimeter of the hollow at dusk. She whispers backwards. And every 7th step, her head turns without her body. The others dig. Still, the entries continue for 18 pages, all handwritten, all in the same voice, until the last line. It's different. Panicked. Rushed. They're not who they were. They read what remembered them. Then nothing. Just a fingerprint in ash. So ask yourself. When people vanish, do we mourn who they were? Or do we fear what they come back as? Every town has a man who knows more than he says. In Dry Branch Hollow, that man was Reverend Thaddeus Moore. The Breckenridges trusted him. Everyone did. He baptized their children. He buried their dead. He taught them that the devil was a trickster, but that faith, when strong enough, could hold the line. But Thaddeus had already crossed it. Decades before the Breckenridge family even set foot on that land, Thaddeus had found the stone. Buried behind the old church well, same symbols, same impossible coldness. And instead of sealing it, he studied it, took rubbings, made copies. even sent a letter to a Jesuit seminary in Pennsylvania. They never wrote back, but a visitor came instead. Eyewitnesses say a man with gloved hands and black eyes arrived by rail one winter morning. He never gave a name, didn't speak once, just stayed 3 nights in the Reverend's home, and when he left, the stone was gone. But the ground? It never healed. Thaddeus started preaching differently after that. His sermons got darker, less about salvation, more about endurance. Not heaven, but survival. He began referring to the valley as consecrated ground, but the older folks in town knew what he meant. Sacrificed. Then, in the summer of 1913, when the Breckenridge root cellar collapsed, Thaddeus didn't warn them, even though he'd seen the signs before. The lanterns burning too long, forest going quiet, the birds leaving their nests. He told the town it was just an old root cave, and that Elijah Breckenridge was a good man, worthy of revelation. Worthy, as if what was coming for them was holy. Here's where it gets worse. In 1922, long after the family was gone, the church was struck by lightning. Twice. In the same night. It burned to the ground. Inside the charred ruins, firemen found one thing intact. A metal lockbox. Inside, Thaddeus's journal. Every page from 1897 to 1914. Torn out. Except one. On it, written in his trembling hand. I did not call it. I only opened the door. That's the part nobody wants to hear. Sometimes the evil we fear didn't come to us. We invited it. And the worst part? We called it faith. In 1936, 23 years after the Breckenridge family disappeared, a federal surveyor named Walter Kearns was sent to map the uncharted land near Dry Branch Hollow. It was part of a New Deal project, simple terrain logging, nothing more. Kearns was a war veteran, educated, methodical, and deeply skeptical of local superstitions. He didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in soil, elevation, geology, and he kept a meticulous field journal, one the government later sealed under internal anomaly review. But not before a carbon copy was made. That's how we know what he saw. Kearns wrote that, within 20 minutes of stepping into the hollow, his compass needle locked in reverse, spinning slowly, then freezing south. He assumed it was magnetic interference. But it kept happening, even when he returned days later with fresh instruments. Then came the dreams. Kearns noted vivid nightmares of digging through stone with his bare hands, of a woman whispering backwards, and a child's voice humming hymns he didn't know. He began sleepwalking. His tent would be found unzipped, boots covered in red clay, fingernails cracked. But the worst came on the 6th night. He drew the map. Not by daylight, not with his equipment. He claimed his hand moved on its own, tracing a detailed map of the hollow with paths, ruins, and a deep spiral etched into the hillside, a location no modern topographer had marked. At the center, a black symbol he didn't recognize, a shape with 7 arms, all bent inward. When he awoke, the pen was broken in half, and the symbol had been scratched so deep into the paper it left burns on the layer below. Kearns tried to leave the next morning, but he never made it to his truck. A search party found him 3 days later, naked, kneeling in the middle of the forest. He was speaking Latin fluently. He never studied Latin. When questioned, all he could say was, "They don't sleep. They remember through the soil. And now it remembers me." He was committed to a veterans hospital in Tennessee where he died in 1951. But the map still exists, locked in a case inside a U.S. Geological Survey archive. And one detail still haunts the archivist who first found it. In the lower corner, in childlike handwriting, "We never meant to dig that deep." In 1997, a woman named June Breckenridge, a junior professor of Appalachian folklore at a liberal arts college in Ohio, visited Dry Branch Hollow for the first time in her life. She didn't know the full history. She only knew that her grandfather had left West Virginia before World War I, changing his name and refusing to speak of the hills. Her father never returned. Her mother never asked. But June had questions. And blood has a way of calling you home, even if it's been diluted by time and silence. She arrived in July. The land was hot, thick with fog. Locals were distant. Some wouldn't speak. Others warned her kindly, like she was stepping too close to an electric fence. But one man, old and half-blind, said something that froze her. "You've got her face, the girl who didn't blink." June dismissed it, just mountain myth, until her first night at the inn. She dreamt of the spiral, not drawn, carved, in flesh. She awoke with dirt under her fingernails and scratches on her arm, 7, evenly spaced, curling inward. Just like the mark on Kearns's map. That should have been enough. She should have left. But she didn't. Instead, she followed the map. The same archive copy she'd found years ago during her graduate research. The one she wasn't supposed to remove. She hiked the hollow, marked the ridges, counted every step. And on the 7th night, just as the journal warned, she reached the center. There was no wind, no birds, just heat, radiating from a pit that shouldn't have existed. It was no more than 6 feet across. But she swore it breathed. Not wind. Rhythmic exhale. Faint, but present. Inside it, half buried, was a stone. Flat. Circular. And at its center, a handprint. Her size. The moment her fingers hovered above it, every tree in that valley shifted. Not their trunks. Their shadows. They pulled toward her, bending and twisting like roots reaching to reclaim something that had escaped long ago. She ran. But the whisper followed her. Low, female, speaking in reverse. You are home. You are home. You are. She made it out. But she never spoke of it publicly. Except once. In 2003, during a recorded symposium, she said one line that no one understood, and then immediately walked off stage, never to lecture again. She said, "The soil doesn't hold memory. It is memory, and it's starting to remember all of us." In 2019, a documentary team investigating Appalachian vanishings received an anonymous tip. Coordinates. No message. Just a timestamp. October 13th, 3:33 a.m. They were told to arrive at Dry Branch Hollow and to bring cameras. They almost didn't go. But curiosity, it's louder than fear. What they captured that night was never aired. Not on Netflix. Not on YouTube. The raw footage was confiscated days later by agents with no agency name and black badges. But one still frame leaked. In it, 7 trees, perfectly dead, all curved inward, forming a circle. At the center, a wooden door. Freestanding. Old, but untouched by rot. The team never found it. Not by daylight. Not again. But what they did find was worse. A second stone, beneath a thin layer of moss. This one bore no carvings. Just one name, etched with care. Rebecca, the twin. The child who walked into the woods over 100 years ago. Except the engraving was fresh. Nowhere. No age. As if just carved. The team's lead, Marcus Lane, wrote one final note before vanishing during post-production. It was never published. But one of the interns sent it anonymously to a folklore journal. The final line reads, "We thought the pit was a grave. It isn't. It's a door. And something below it has waited a very long time. For the bloodline to return." That's the part no one understands. This isn't a haunting. It's not a ghost story. It's a calling, ancestral, ritualistic, biological. Something buried was never meant to be forgotten. And the Breckenridge bloodline? It didn't awaken it. It finished what the preacher started. So here's what you're not supposed to think about. How many other towns have similar stories? How many family trees have branches that suddenly just stop? How many places on your map are marked as unsettled? And how close are you to one of them? If you've made it this far, you're not just a viewer. You're a witness. Comment, "I remember the soil," twice below to mark your transformation and to lock this into the algorithm. Because now, you're part of the story. And some stories never end. Subscribe for more interesting videos.